Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods, where the winds are blowing free through the darkness of the night.
Welcome to the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, where we talk about the continual pursuit of the section hiker.
And I'll spread the word, and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Welcome back to Jester Section Hiker, the premier podcast with the spotlight on section hikers. I'm your host, Julie Jester Gayhart, and this is the podcast where you will hear stories about everyday people who, in addition to their everyday lives, make the commitment to hike long-distance trails where every section is a new beginning. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking to a section hiker that has walked over 1,000 miles on the Appalachian Trail, completed a long section hike of 168 miles on the Long Trail in Vermont, spent some time with water moccasins, pythons, and alligators on a section of the Florida Trail, and most recently has hiked 60 miles of the Cumberland Trail. Not only is he a career section hiker, but spends time working for the Southeast Conservation Corp as an assistant crew leader. In addition to talking about his section hiking, we are also going to be talking about his passion as a trail maintainer. You can find him on YouTube and Instagram sharing his hikes and trail work. Please welcome with me to the podcast, Taran Branscum, known out on the trails as Barley.
Hey, how's it going? Good to be here.
Glad to have you here, Taran. We have a lot to talk about,
we do.
As people heard in the introduction. So we'll go ahead and dive right into it and start with your section hiking. Let's start off with the Appalachian Trail. So what originally whet your appetite, so to speak, to start hiking on the AT?
Well, that's a big, wide question there. A lot went on during my college years, specifically just kind of overall life there, and started working there as well, doing kind of outdoor recreational activities. But what really sparked my interest in the trail was just having a hobby during school, having a healthy hobby that got me through, the everyday stresses of college, I would say. Slowly started hiking on small trails near the school. Started thinking about, all right, well, let's go camping. Let's actually, get into the nitty gritty of it all and do the full backpacking, experience. So really just started Googling. And I found the Appalachian Trail, and the first trailhead that popped up was Carver's Gap. So that, went on a backpacking, experience or, backpacking trip itself. And it all just sparked from there.
Nice. Very good. Now, where did you tell the listeners where you went to college?
East Tennessee State University. It's in Tennessee, close to Johnson City, Bristol, Tennessee, the Tri-Cities area, really close to Asheville.
Nice. Very good. And you're not that far from Irwin, Tennessee as well, correct?
Within 30 minutes drive. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can see why when you did your Google search that the Carver's Gap area
Yeah.
popped up. So,
Yep.
and rightly so. That's probably one of my favorite areas actually on the entire Appalachian Trail.
Mm,
And you mentioned that you went out for your first section hike, so to speak, on the AT in that area. So,
right.
kind of tell us where you started, what happened. I know you mentioned to me you went through some crazy weather. So, talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So my first official backpacking section of the AT was Carver's Gap to the Apple Orchard shelter. Now, funny thing, a lot of people would be like, well, that shelter's completely gone. And you're right. So at the time, I was still learning, what to prepare for. I was really just, a newbie, you would say, to leave no trace. Understanding, prep and plan ahead and prepare, kind of, going through those steps. I did a little planning. Got rain gear, got a tent, got my big three, got a backpack, sleeping bag, all the things I needed, food. I knew what a bear bag was. Went through the official steps. One thing I didn't do was take the proper and dated guides. So I didn't have the proper guides. So
Ah, okay.
yeah, so started the trip at Carver's Gap, got there early morning one day, started walking, saw the signs, everything felt good. Got to the shelter of the day, which was only 5 miles in, and that was the Over Mountain Shelter, the big red barn.
Yeah,
Everybody
that's the
calls it.
barns. Yeah, did
Yep.
you so you didn't stay at the barn, right?
No, I did. For the first night,
Oh,
I
you
did.
did. Okay,
Yeah,
for the
so it
first
was like a
night.
2-night backpacking trip. So stayed there, started the next day. Everything was great. So then the crazy weather started. Going over Little Hump and Big Hump, the tallest peaks near Carver's Gap, and just super exposed, and 30-40 mile an hour winds, sleet, rain, all the bad weather you could think of, muddy trail. So I'm going through the trail, walking through the area, and I think from the red barn, the guide said I was roughly 10 to 12 miles from the other shelter. So I was like, cool, I can do it, I got this.
Yeah, that didn't seem too bad until you got up on those balds, huh?
Yeah, and then it was straight exposed weather, rain, sleet, just going over Bradley Gap and just getting the full force of walking through treacherous weather at some crazy times.
Yeah, I would say for the listeners that have not been in that area on the Appalachian, it's almost like I would imagine it's like Switzerland up there. You
Yeah.
kind of feel like that when you're up there. It's
Mhm.
that exposed. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so on Bradley's Gap, getting over the top, got down to the bottom, on the bottom of Dole Flats area, and see a hiker, and I was like, all right, this is a great time to ask him, like, where am I? Where's this shelter? How far am I?
Oh,
I'm soaking wet. Where do I go? Um, So I asked him, like, hey, man, how far is the shelter from here? I'm getting pretty, kind of just irritated. I want to get out of this rain, get my feet dry. He's like, what shelter? There's no shelter here. And I was like, you're joking. You're kidding me. He was like, yeah, the last shelter that was here was like 5 years ago, and it got tore down because the locals destroyed it. And I was like, what do I do?
Oh no.
So I set up camp in this terrible weather on this crazy bald, or just walk back. So I decided to try and walk back, try to get to
Oh, wait
the
a minute. Wait
shelter.
a minute. Try and walk back
Yeah,
south
yeah,
to the
yeah.
Oh, okay. You didn't tell me this part. So what went down with that?
I ended up trying. I got over Big Hump and got to a nice area and started camping. Yeah, it was just
Wow.
camp it out and wait. Yeah, it was definitely a crazy day.
Wow. So you went all the way down. That's a steep downhill
Yeah,
to where the Apple Orchard shelter is. And then you turned around and went all the
yeah.
way
I
back
went
up.
all the way back. Yeah, I didn't know. I felt getting on. In the beginning of it all, it was like I needed to get to shelter. So that was the goal, was get back to the barn. Yeah, at the time.
Well, you almost did. Well, that's a decent hike to whet your appetite with for sure.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
basically, it sounds like that maybe drove you to keep getting out there because after that
Oh yeah.
first hike, you told me pretty much you went out on the trail every chance you got,
Yep.
and between like 2014 to 18, you managed to complete Springer Mountain, Georgia, which is the southern terminus, north to Damascus, Virginia. So I have a few questions about that, and the first one is: did you go primarily alone when you went out?
So yeah, from 2014 all the way, I went on multiple weekend backpacking trips and work trips, including with the outdoor adventure program, which we'll get into a little bit later. But really, let's see, try to get my thoughts. Going by myself was not.
Did you take some college buddies with you, or
Yeah,
did
like
you prefer
plenty
to
of
go by
times I took
yourself?
college
Yeah.
buddies, but most of the time I was solo. Yeah, it was just kind of something I had to do. It's like, had a bad week, go out on the trail, get to walking, just get it out.
Nice. So what was your longest stretch that you were out there?
Longest stretch on the
Like beyond a
AT.
weekend?
I'd say about 2 weeks. Yeah, there was a fall
Okay.
break and then one trip I had no work for a week and it was fall break. So I was like, all right, I'm gone. Said goodbye to everybody and was like, all right, let's hit the trail
Nice.
and just dropped my car off and walked the rest of the way. And sometimes mini section hikes, there was my buddy Scooby. He would always come with me or we would do a key swap or, we've walked a lot together.
Very good. So did you try to do stuff in a straight line from Springer Mountain up to Damascus, or did you kind of patch stuff together?
It all changed. Yeah, I feel with one of the biggest things with section hiking is, that if you've done the section before, the area, what could happen, and you just kind of go day to day with it. So we would do our basic planning, food, location, calling who we need to, and then just kind of go from there. So we'll be like, all right, let's say we're going to start from south and go north. We would just kind of go to the section that's there, and if weather's bad, we may change it. It just kind of all depends on what's going on the day of, but sometimes we kind of just do the basic planning and go from there.
Are you the kind of guy that pre-plans like your food, your resupply, or you just kind of go into town and get what you need?
Mainly, I would usually mark the book. Every resupply, everywhere there's a resupply, I'd mark my book and just kind of follow that. If I've got 2 days worth of food and weather's good, maybe I'll push it and make that a day's worth of food, or vice versa. Just make it work with what you have. And weather is a big thing with a lot of resupplies for me. Is I try to get to the town as fast as possible usually, but sometimes you have bad weather, so you got to prepare.
Yes, indeed. And you learned that over there on on Carver's Gap.
Yeah.
So how would you say, or would you say your gear changed over that 4-year period of time? Did you get rid of stuff? Did you get new stuff? How did that go down?
Oh yeah, you never stop changing gear. That's a big lesson with backpacking, in my opinion. Went from carrying, a 70-liter bag to now I'm carrying a 35-liter bag, carrying barely anything. So it's,
wow.
You just see what works for you and go with it.
What's one thing that you didn't get rid of or didn't change?
Didn't get rid of. I still carry a stove. That's a big one for me. A lot of people are like, oh, just cut the stove out and eat cold foods. I'm like, well, that's your choice. I'm going to eat well. I can take a small little aluminum pot, aluminum pan, and make eggs and bacon and have a great breakfast still and be under 25 pounds on my pack weight. So it's just the way you can find gear and do what you have to make the lightest and best experience with that gear. So even with light gear, you're losing some comfort. So go with what you feel is comfortable and what you can handle.
I agree. Now, during that time between Springer and Damascus, do you have a favorite area on trail or a favorite town?
Favorite area on trail and favorite town. So favorite area still to this day is Carver's Gap. From Hughes Gap all the way down to the bottom of 19E. That whole section there is just, it's a whole world in itself on the trail. That's usually the first place you come out of the green tunnel at, and it's just wide open. And yeah, that's one of my favorite sections on trail. That for me. Favorite town.
And that's a really good way to explain it. One of the first places you come out of the green tunnel at. That is a really good way to explain that area. And what about a favorite town?
Favorite town. There's plenty of great towns, hot springs. You got to Damascus, of course, with trail days and just great hospitality all over there. But one of my favorite towns that comes to mind is rather small. And the only reason it's my favorite is because it just helped out at a very intense experience at time on trail. Just bad weather again, it's coming out of some crazy places. And that place is Troutdale, Virginia. So it's the first town you hit right outside of Grayson Highlands State Park. And there's a little church hostel. And we were going through Grayson Highlands State Park with some just super, super cold weather. Iced over. A lot of the trails, ice and rock. Rock and ice don't go well together. So you just got slippery terrain. And we got to that hostel and it's like come as you go. So there's no one to deal with. You just roll up, do what you need to, sign a book and, leave a little donation. And it was the best weekend we could have had. It was me and my buddy Scooby. It was just a sight for sore eyes for sure, coming out of some crazy weather.
Very nice. So basically, you've got a little over 1,000 miles on the Appalachian Trail. And then something went down in your mind. In the summer of 2017, you decided you wanted to take on the challenge of a thru hike.
Yeah.
And chose the long trail in Vermont. So talk to us about why you chose the long trail and why you wanted to take on the challenge of a thru hike.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. The long trail. Taking on a thru hike. Yeah. So, along that experience from 2014 and all those hiking trips I've took, I was just constantly following through hikers, following the YouTubers, following any blogists or blog I could follow to understand how to properly through hike, what plans you need to take, what preparations you need to do, all of those just crazy, how to get the lightest gear, backpack, and all of that. And really took it to heart. It was, I was constantly, if I wasn't in class or wasn't working, I was looking up something to do with trail, or what way can I lose 2 pounds, 1 pound, half a pound. All of those things were just running through my head all the time. So yeah, then I decided, all right, I've got a summer, I've got a month. Let's try to do a trail. Let's what trails out there that I can walk. So started looking up the places, had the long trail on the mind, had the Benton Mackay trail on the mind, and had maybe a long section hike on the AT again, maybe a place I haven't done. But I decided to hike the long trail mainly because, one, I get to kill a section that I haven't been on of the AT, 100 miles of the Vermont long trail run through the
Very
AT.
true.
So I was like, all right, killing one bird there with one stone. And then I get to hike a whole nother trail within that after the first 100 miles. I was like, boom, that's got to be it. I'm just doing too much there not to just hike a trail to do that. So yeah, I started hiking like August 4th or so, right after my wife's birthday. And I was like, I'll be back as soon as I can.
All right. So how many days did you end up spending out there on the long trail?
Ended up being about, I think it was about 18, 20 days or so. From what I
okay,
can recall.
So what went down? Because the long trail is, I can't remember,
272 miles or so.
Yeah, 272 miles, and you ended up doing about 168 miles.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And that is nothing to not be proud of in and of itself.
Agreed.
Because obviously you made it through the 100 miles of the Appalachian Trail and then about 68 to 70 miles of the actual long trail. So what happened? What went down?
Yeah, I got you. So in the beginning, I was meeting my buddy Scooby. He was actually on his through hike of that year of the AT. So I was like, all right, everything was just lining up with this trail. So what happened on the trail, we got about 100 miles in. We then split because goes north through Vermont, and then the rest of the trail goes southeast up into New Hampshire and goes up into Maine and everything. So we split at the 100-mile mark. Had about, I think I had roughly 11 days left to get to the northern terminus in, what's it called? I cannot remember the name of it. Jay's Peak is the name of the northern terminus area.
Mm-hmm. And the northern terminus for everybody of the long trail, it's right there on the border of Vermont and Canada, correct?
Yep, that's right. So yeah, I had about 11 days worth, or definitely 11 days left to get the trail finished. I was like, all right, I think I can do that. Pulling 15, 20 miles, I can do that. No problem. Got all my resupplies set up. I even got a box halfway there. So I was like, I got this. So a few days run by, get good mileage, get good days, good weather, going over Mount Abraham and all the really tourist areas where people go, and had good miles there. So I was like, all right, we're doing good on time. So about 150 miles in, I was like, all right, let's see if, I've got all my paperwork in order. Let's make sure I've got everything to get back home properly. I am running close to time to get home to school and actually get started back with my next classes. And I was being a senior that year. So I was like, I've got a lot of crap to do. So we've got to get things in order. So, going back to that real life aspect of it all, I had to really book down and like, all right, I've got to work on this as well when I get service. And it was hard to find service as well. So just a lot of factors go into it.
And that's a mental factor too, when you only have a certain, and I think a lot of section hikers deal with that, is that one of the things about being a section hiker is you still have your home life mentally in your mind when you're actually out on the trail, whether you're out a week or 2 weeks, you're going out for a month. Mm-hmm. So you had the beginning of school and your paperwork in your brain. And what made that final decision, all right, I'm not going to finish this, let's get off trail kind of thing and do what you need to do?
Right. So yeah, going through my little paperwork, my bus tickets and all that, I noticed that I'm going through Canada on my paperwork. I didn't prepare for going through Canada. To do that, you have to have a passport. You got to be able to go over customs and the border. So I was like, oh, now I have to get off trail. I have to go find a place to get my ticket changed, because if I rolled up the day of, they wouldn't have been able to change my ticket, because there's only a few buses that leave, so it would have been just a lot to deal with. 2 days, because I was going to finish about 2 days before I had to get school started. Still had to drive down from Chattanooga to Johnson City, get all my car stuff in order. I was going through car trouble too, so it's just like everything on top of each other. So I was like, all right, I just got to call it. So got to a road, and it was like, this is my next road for 20 miles. I'm gonna have to hitch. I got to get to town. So got 168 miles into the trail, and I was like, yep, got to go. That's all I got. See you next time.
And it kind of sounds like you're okay with that decision.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
oh yeah,
you started off, you wanted to do a through hike. You ended up hiking 100 miles with your buddy Scooby, and you ended up getting about 68 more miles.
Yep.
And I say that you were happy with that decision because in the winter of 2018, and I love this too, and you said to me before you were going to be married to the love of your life, you guys have been together since you were in 7th grade. Absolutely fabulous. Right. You decided to take on what I call the alligators, pythons, and water moccasins of the Florida Trail.
That's right. Yeah.
So instead of going back to the long trail and finish that out, you wanted to go down and tackle some of the Florida Trail. And you actually told me you started at the southern terminus in the swamps. And as soon as you said that, I was like, say what? So
yeah, that's right. Yep. The swamps.
So what prompted that decision to go spend some time on the Florida Trail and start down there in those swamps?
Yeah, just another big life decision. Just graduated school. I was like, all right, let's do this. This has been the dream of going on a, trail longer than 100 days or 150 days or 200 days, however long it takes. And had the money, got plenty of graduation money, got plenty of savings. I did just, like you said, just decided to get married to the love of my life. So getting married and paying for that was another factor going into it all. But hitting the Florida Trail December 31st, right at New Year's, and started the new year on a trail. And it was one heck of an experience, especially the first beginnings of that trail.
Yeah. So talk to us about the first 3 days. Something about knee-high water, your feet swelled up, and you had blisters all on the bottom of your feet. So that sounds lovely.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, right from the get-go, you're in water. I mean, your first mile, you're getting a little, kind of just a feel for it. There's the terminus right there at the visitor center. It's pretty public. There's plenty of boardwalks and fencing around the area to prevent the gators and just wildlife getting in that kind of local spot. But once you go through this gate and you hit the first orange blaze, it's swamp. You are walking through swamp. Put that forward. You're walking through a swamp. It's intense.
Now, were you prepared for that? Because I can't even imagine. I mean, I know how it is when your feet are wet for a certain amount of time, but I can't imagine my feet being wet like day in and day out and them not looking like shriveled up prunes and things. So what was going on with your feet?
So definitely expected, the water, expected all of it. When I was reading all the guides, all the data book that we receive, you have to become a member of the Florida Trail Association to kind of get all that stuff. So started going through the guides, and it was saying, you are going to have swamp waters throughout the entire length of the trail. So it's not just the first 3 days, it's the whole trail, but the first 3 days is where you get the big taste of it. Yeah, so your feet are a big thing. Taking your breaks when you can. There are breaks between the water and the high water and the low water, and you can dry your feet, but you're mostly walking 7-8 hours through water. It's hard to really find a dry spot.
And you told me you had to do something did you do something with your shoes? Did you end up?
So I ended up having to take the soles out, completely untying them and having them free. So I just got the new Lone Peak 3.5s. The size was right and everything, but my feet swelled up so big because of the blisters on the bottom of my feet and the kind of just constant rubbing and everything just caused them to have a weird reaction to the water or something. And my feet were way too big for the shoes. My toes were pushing out the end. I mean, it was just, it was rough. I mean, we were walking through some areas that would suction your feet and you would have to yank on them, and shoes would get stuck and scrapes. And feet were a big thing in the very, very beginning.
Wow. Okay. So we've got the feet, you're in the swamps, and, we're learning that the Florida Trail, pretty much there's water throughout the trail. So what about these alligators, pythons, and these water moccasins? You see, you say that to me and I go, no, I don't want anything to do with that. So were you really that close to alligators and stuff, or how does
Oh
that
yeah.
work?
Oh yeah. I mean, we were walking through big cypress, so it's that normal. Once you cross over that borderline, like you are now in the swamps. There is technically only one way in and one way out, kind of thing. So alligators, yeah, they were to our left. Water moccasins were curled up and looking like flowers in the water. So
No,
you just
no.
kind of have to take your take your steps wisely, and the more noise you make, the more they will hear, and the farther away they'll scurry off to if you're loud enough. Going through that area with people is a must. It's not a place you go in alone, whether you've done it before or whether you think you can make it. It's
Wow.
just a smart decision to go in with someone, just because the things that could happen. You could easily step on a snake and be like, not even knowing it.
No. See, you've already talked me out of it. I mean,
But I mean, it's just you gotta, yeah, it's you just gotta know what you're looking
you got to
for.
know what you're getting into pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely
So
not.
after the swamps and all that, I'm not going to forget that. And I did watch a little bit of some of your YouTube and
Right.
saw some of those alligators. I was like, oh my God, he's not kidding. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, and I'll put your YouTube channel in the
cool.
show
Cool.
notes. So other people that are interested in looking at pythons and things, they can check that out too. So after you started getting more north and learning more about the Florida Trail,
Right.
you said to me that it was expensive. There was a lot of stealth camping, not a lot of hostels. Resupply was tough. So walk me through what you started learning.
Yeah. So really, really, in the beginning of it all, it really hit pretty quick. Our first resupply was a snack machine at Interstate 75, like the interstate area that was right after the swamp. It was straight from a vending machine, which I expected. That was what it said in the book too. I was like, all right, cool. I can live off some food for the next 2 days and a half or so. Honey buns, granola bars. I can do that, no problem. I've done it before. We've all had our crazy resupplies, but it got expensive quick. About 2 weeks in, hit a few RV campgrounds and was just bombarded with, yeah, that'll be $40 for a stay. That's just for a stay, not including washing my clothes. Took about $6-7 with those machines they have. But it just all of that stuff stacked, and I only had a certain amount of money because I was planning on going from base of Florida in the south all the way to Maine. I was trying to connect the Florida Trail and the AT, so trying to do both of them just puts in a lot of actual money problems in the gist of it. With having another life, just career and everything, and not able to focus strictly on trail, you gotta put your foot forward where it's
Yeah.
best needed, I would say.
Well, let me ask you this. So how many miles did you actually end up completing on the Florida Trail that year?
So did 500 miles roughly, got to a nice gas station and just had to call it again. Like, got to save the money. Stealth camping, just like we were talking about, not a lot of hostels. It was very expensive hotels if I didn't have a simple RV campground. And you've got to have those amenities sometimes. Resupplies, again, it's just, yeah, super expensive in Florida. It's not very established like the AT is. When you have a small Dollar Tree right there in town or something else, there's nothing like that on the Florida Trail. So definitely a total
Gotcha.
different trail and aspect toward the AT.
And during our initial conversation, when we were talking about this, you stated to me that, and we've talked about this previous, that it was hard to stay organized and stay on a trail when you're trying to live your life. So expand on that for us.
So yeah, kind of like it says, staying organized on trail. Mainly, what that would factor down to is keeping good miles, keeping a good state of mind, keeping a proper mindset, healthy mindset on the trail, and not trying to focus on other things. If you're not, I feel like if I'm not there in the moment, I'm not going to remember it. So dealing with a lot of mental pain and physical pain and just not enjoying it is not where I'd like to be, or at the time I did not want to be. So calling it off and be like, all right, let's just put this on hold and get some things organized at home. Come back to the trail sometime, do a different trail. and just try to keep a good mindset with it all. I don't like to do things and not enjoy it. So it's like, all right, got to call it. I want to enjoy this, not just kind of keep the memory.
No, and I agree. And I really like your attitude about that because, quite honestly, Taran, you have done a lot of hiking. I
Yeah.
mean, in the beginning, in the introduction, I called you the career section hiker, and you are. I mean,
Yeah.
you've done a lot of trails. You've had your taste of the AT, you've had your taste of the Long Trail, you've had your taste of the Florida Trail, and most recently, we can go ahead and get into this too, is you have spent some time out on the Cumberland Trail.
Yep. Last year and this year,
So
18 and 19 of this year. Yeah.
18 and 9. So tell us, where is the Cumberland Trail?
So it's in Tennessee, Virginia, and a little portion of Kentucky.
Okay. And how many miles is the Cumberland Trail?
It's roughly 282 miles.
Okay.
It's not finished yet, so a lot of it just kind of factors in roads and all of that.
Okay. So you kind of have to maybe get on a road to connect you to
Yeah.
another part of trail kind of thing. What area did you hike on the Cumberland Trail?
So I'm trying to recall the sections. I did 60 miles in the southern portion below Knoxville area, closer toward Chattanooga and Dalton, Saudi Daisy segment and Three Gorges segment. And there was one more that was not named yet. Like we were saying, it's still being built. So there's a lot of stuff changing within the core structure of it all.
So what made you say, hey, let's go out and, I'll go out and take on 60 miles of this trail? Did something call you to the trail? What, had you maybe worked in that area a little bit or?
Right. So I started doing some trail work with the Cumberland Trail up in Knoxville. Did a little, just kind of, I would say, intro to trail work itself. I haven't done much trail work, but the stuff I've done kind of set me up for success in that aspect of it. And after I did that, I was like, I'd like to hike some of this trail. I'd like to see it. It's really close to home. So yeah, let's get on some of the trail.
And I think you said, there's like some old, you to me, you described it as old country, old families, and rugged trail. What does that mean?
So old country is just old and kind of the doorway of going from, civilized urban areas, rural, and walking into these farm homes, all this big land people own, just lots of cows, lots of livestock. And it's just just kind of step back when you hit that trail and you see all these old barns, all these old family heirloom, just kind of antique style living.
Nice.
Rugged living, and it just really showed what the trail background was of it all. Some of these trails were traveled back in the day. These trails were their highways. They were their, ways to get to the other partner's land, or just all that really cool backstory to it all is half the reason, at least I walk in these trails.
Nice. And that's why I'm going to call you the career section hiker. So
I like that.
Yeah. So we've pretty much established you are a career section hiker. And now I kind of want to turn the conversation to what you're actually doing as far as work, trail maintenance. And that was one of the things that drew me to your Instagram page and reaching out to you. So first of all, let's talk about your involvement with the Southeast Conservation Corp and your trail maintenance work with the SECC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I work with Southeast Conservation Corp and do all kinds of stuff, whether it's education, trail work, trail maintenance, building structures, all of that really fun stuff. I would say when you get to have a job in the woods, you're doing the really hard labor is what I like to say.
And we appreciate, believe me, those of us that love hiking on the trails. I mean, hard labor is, I don't even know if that does it justice to some of the things that you guys do. So what is your actual degree in? So you went to college outside of Johnson City. So what did you end up getting your degree in?
Yeah, so I have a sport and leisure management degree with a concentration in park and recreation management.
Okay. And was that originally going to lead you to be a park ranger, or were you heading toward that route?
Yeah, that was my route. I had, within that degree, there are so many places you can go. It's a very vast major. You can go from running a sports facility to a coach, to a park ranger, to an outdoor recreator, to a facility manager, to a nonprofit owner. It's just work for the Forest Service, work for the Park Service. It's a very wide area for a job. But yeah, I had the kind of dream of being a park ranger. In my previous high school experience, I was in JROTC, liked the structure of the military, liked wearing a uniform, really liked that aspect of it all, but still didn't want to be behind a desk. So kind of changed my mind from being a park ranger to going to be out in the woods, trying to stay away from that desk work for a time, trying to get that hands-on in the field work experience, and just really wanted to be doing trail work. It was my dream to walk all the trails I could, at least get 1 foot on all 11 national scenic trails. And just being on trail is where I felt comfortable, and being paid to do that, that's just a dream come true, really. So.
And then during college, while you were out getting your feet on these different trails, you were also involved in an outdoor adventure program. So give us a little bit about a background on that.
Yeah, so an basic outdoor adventure program essentially means you're going to be doing some recreational activities, from backpacking, canoeing, ropes course, low, high, team building courses, all kinds of just really fun educational activities with students from the classes there, or even just outside sources from organizations that want to, have their soccer team work better, or, all of those things go into it. But my big thing was doing the Buccaneer Outdoor Adventure Program.
Okay.
Throughout all of that, we did climbing while instructing. We did bike shop. We had a few bike mechanics. But the Buccaneer Outdoor Adventure Program essentially was a outdoor orientation for freshmen. So essentially showed them the area, showed them what all Johnson City had to provide for them, via being outside, camping, local trails, anything that you could do outside. So we took them out to some local lakes, did kayaking, took them out backpacking, took them out doing some trail work, where we'll talk a little bit more about what SAWS is. So we did some trail volunteer days with each group, had about 3 groups for a summer, and we would go out and just say, hey, these are your wilderness trails, and this is the organization that is keeping them up to standards for our equestrians, our hikers, all of our other mountain biking is there on some of the forest lands. So just kind of showing them what the trail is in their local area, and just kind of, trying to push them forward, like, hey, go hike this trail, go see your local area. And did that for a good 3 summers consecutively, and loved every bit of it. And that's where it kind of showed me what the nonprofit side of it all was, and just really sparked another spark hit, and just took me away, I would say.
That is awesome. I'm sitting here listening to you thinking, I wish I would have done that when I was, I wish somebody would have taken me out when I was a freshman in college, and shown me the trails and various things going on around the area where I was going to school. That is amazing. So you mentioned SAWS, but that is actually the Southern Appalachian Wilderness Steward. So what exactly is SAWS?
So SAWS is, just another nonprofit organization that works with the Forest Service and any other kind of organization that has wilderness land. Not too sure about familiars, but yeah, they work within the wilderness areas and maintain those trails in those areas.
Okay. And I've heard of that because there's a SAWS, I don't know if you call it a location or a zone in Western North Carolina. So I have heard of that before. And you are currently, this is like my favorite part, beyond your career section hiking, is that you are with the SECC and you're an assistant crew leader with them. And this is your 3rd season, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so talk to us about what the SECC is and what your role is currently.
Gotcha. Yeah. So Southeast Conservation Corp is an organization that works with the Forest Service, National Park Service, private land trust owners, and they maintain the trails within those areas. That can include the campground areas within the Forest Service. With the National Park Service, that's mainly, trail work. Can go into corridor clearing, kind of just all the different projects that go with just kind of trail maintenance in itself.
So what's the size of a crew right now? What's the size of the crew you're on?
Right. So size of the crew I am on right now is about 7 people, but the max is usually 8 people. You have your 2 co-leads, which is one's a crew leader, one's an assistant crew lead, which that's what I am, as an assistant crew lead. And then you have your 6 members. And that's usually the kind of just kind of the breakdown, and different corps do it differently. There is, different guidelines, kind of standard operating procedures within different corps all have different policies on what they would allow. So.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for doing trail maintenance. I see trail maintenance crews out working while I'm hiking, and I literally stop and profusely thank them because, I see them hauling rocks and bog bridges and all kinds of stuff. And I'm just literally thanking goodness that I do not have to do that. But we wouldn't have trails if there weren't people like you out there doing that and providing that for us. So one of the things we talked about is, and this I find extremely interesting, is what is the hardest part of being on a crew and doing trail maintenance?
Right. Hardest part. The best way to break that down is what I kind of have here. It is a very physical job. You're going to be doing some hard, laborious activities. If we have a bridge that we're building and we have to go a half mile in the trail, let's just say we're going into a wilderness area. We're not going to be taking our saws or our power tools. We're not going to be taking any of our powered gear itself. We're going to take the hand tools. We're going to take our pickmatics, our cuttermatics, our Pulaskis. We're going to take all of these tools into the area and really just build it with our hands. If we're going to be building a bridge, we're going to carry that wood into the woods half a mile, kind of going back to it. If we're going to be tearing out an old bridge, we're going to physically rip up the old boards and carry it out. That's what it's going to take. But then it goes into like the mental aspect of it all. Well, dang, I've got to do this for 10 hours a day for the next 8 days. And that can really take its toll on somebody.
And you guys are out there staying at the site too, right? You're like setting up camp, and you're out there working
9 days at a time. Yeah. We wake up at 6 and usually get off around 6 or 7.
Wow.
And we have to cook our dinner and all of that. We have to deal with the weather. We work through the weather. Specific weather we don't. Thunder, lightning, tornadoes. We won't work through that serious weather. But if it's coming a downpour and we can still work, we're going to still work.
Nice. So give us some examples of some of the work that you actually might be doing. I know we talked about some bog bridges and things like that. Right. So give us some more examples.
Yeah, so kind of some examples I can go over, kind of just going through what my current season has started. So kind of going through my mindset of what my training week was just like. So we're going to be putting in 2 steel I-beam bridges, one's 26 foot, one's 36 foot. So that's, that right there, just the fact that I said steel I-beams should be putting some big exclamation points at each end of it, like, oh, that's huge. Yeah, there's a big machine coming in. We're gonna have to lay these concrete footers and have them bolt them down to the concrete before we can even start applying the wood to the steel structure itself. But to do all of that, we've had to clear some corridor, which is essentially some areas around the area around the trail, roughly 12 feet high, 4 feet out to the your arms, and then 2 feet at the feet. So cutting corridor, we've done bog bridges, we've tore out old bridges, doing some weed eating, basic brush cutting through the area, getting some small trees down, and then even cutting hazardous trees out of the trail. If there's a tree in the middle of the trail, we'll cut it out, move it out of the way, get everything out.
Taran, every time I go over a bridge now on the trail, I'm literally going to think of you. I'm not kidding. I'm not.
That's the funny thing is, like, you always think about, like, not when you're not in the field, you think about all these things, but when you get out there, you're like, I'm standing on a bridge that took someone probably weeks to build, and it blows my mind every time. And now I have the chance to be like, oh, I can go walk this trail and tell people, like, yo, I actually helped someone build this bridge here.
And that's got to be a great feeling. That's got to be.
Yeah. Sparks I could be in some of the shittiest weather and just be like, I'm building a bridge people can walk over and not have to take this muddy path. It just sparks. Everything goes off inside. Yeah, it's hard to explain with words.
Nice. Now, do you guys have any female crew members?
Oh yeah, the core lifestyle is full of females, full of women. The CEO of Southeast Conservation Corp is a woman. Brenna, she's a great resource. She's got so much knowledge. She was a core member when this organization started and worked her way up all the way to the top. More than half my crew leaders have been female. There's a lot of female presence in the core world, and it's a great thing. I think we've all had plenty of positions where there's plenty of men there, but not many women's presence, and I dislike that. I'd rather have every point of view, every personality, every type of diverse person you could think of in the workplace. And, growing up with a single mother, I've learned to just enjoy every presence possible. And yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. And Taran, we're not done yet. You're also okay. So we've established you are a career section hiker.
Yeah.
We also know that you love your work that you're doing with trail maintenance, that you're doing with the SECC. But this is another really cool thing that I think is fascinating, because those of us that hike have seen trees that have fallen down, that have to be cut out of the way. And you're also a certified B level crosscut sawer. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you said that right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So what does that mean?
So the best way to describe this, and I'll try not to mess it up, but it's essentially using the old style tools they used in the 1900s to cut trees down. In 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, they were using crosscut saws. They were using axes. They didn't have anything like a chainsaw until roughly the 40s or 50s. So yeah, just using the old style tools, big 6 foot, 10 foot, even 4 foot, and even 1-man crosscut saws. There's a vast variety of the old tools like those. And it's just a massive saw with, I think, probably about 100 teeth on it or so, depending on the size, of course.
I feel like I've seen them in movies. I know.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the old National Park Service videos have people cutting a big redwood with a massive crosscut saw. Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a Wilderness Act, and you're actually the 1964 Wilderness Act.
That's right.
Where there's no mechanical tools allowed in certain areas. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the 1964 Wilderness Act was basically limiting the use of motorized equipment in federally administrated wilderness areas. So, all the saws, crews, they have crews just like SECC. They have to go in there with just hand tools. They don't go in there with chainsaws like we do, Southeast. We go in with chainsaws, people who are certified with chainsaws, and they can cut trees down in a matter of seconds, honestly. And comparing that to what a crosscut sawyer does puts it to shame. Truly, some of those trees can take 3 to 4 hours cutting with a crosscut, and it takes just a few minutes with a chainsaw.
Again, I appreciate you learning how to utilize those skills, because I just can't even imagine. So before I let you go, I've got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
Explain to us the objective, hazard, leans. I'm going to get this wrong. Is it binds?
Binds, yeah.
Binds, escape plan, and cut plan. What does that mean for you when you're out there doing maintenance?
Right. So getting the certification, through the Corps world, you have to get certified through things. There's a lot of policies, workers' compensation, to where, to get workers' comp, you have to be certified. Those towering or ladder steps you have to take to get to that point within the Corps world. Of course, I could go out into any wooded area and take a chainsaw and cut it down, but certification is important. So within certifications, there are some things they look for, mainly to teach you what to look for. So one of those things is OLEC, which is an acronym for Objective, Hazard, Leans and Binds, Escape Plan, and Cut Plan. So kind of just a basic example would be, let's say we have a tree that's over the trail and we can take a crosscut to it and get it out of the way. So first thing we're going to do is the objective. 1, we want this tree out of the way so we can continue on walking. 2, we want to get out of this alive. Our objective is to cut this tree out successfully. 2, what are some hazards with cutting this tree down? Possibility that this could be a top bind tree and the root ball itself could pop out and fly down the trail and hit us. Or a tooth could break and hit us in the eye. That's very, very unlikely, but those are just kind of things you're looking for with hazard. Leans and binds. So how far is the tree leaning? So if we were felling the tree, say it was standing vertically upwards, we would want to look at the lean and say, okay, do we want to follow that lean, or do we want to make it go another direction? Say there was a bridge where it was leaning. We want to put a wedge in it and push it the other direction. That's one thing with leans. And binds is where you're looking where the tree is where it's binding. So let's say you have the trees going across the trail, and it's uphill, and it's got a lot of weight on the top side, so it's going to be top heavy. So it's going to be a top bind. So it just goes into a lot of things to where how you're going to cut it. So then you would want to underbuck the tree and go into this big just description of how you're going to cut it. And that goes into the last part called the cut plan. So how are we going to cut this tree out? But before that, you have escape plan. You always try to have at least a few escape plans just in case something does go terribly wrong. So that would be behind the area where you're cutting, so kind of down the trail. It all depends on the situation, of course. And then if it's a 2-man crosscut saw, you would have 2 people, so 2 escape plans, one on the other side, one on the other side. And then, yeah, your cut plan. So how are we going to cut the tree? Are we going to underbuck it? Are we going to do an offset cut? What type of cut are we going to have to do? And then that all just kind of works all out together. And then you now have your full OLEC plan. We are now ready to cut the tree, kind of thing. That's kind of just an example. There's a lot there.
Wow.
You could ask questions on that for days, and there's lessons on that for hours. So it's just kind of going through your steps and making sure you're doing it properly.
Again, Taran, I am never going to walk over another bridge on the trail without thinking about you. And I promise you, as you were describing this plan about the tree, I'm thinking in my mind, I've seen so many trees that are down, and I didn't call it this, but I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to get around it? Am I going to go under it? Am I going to go over it? Am I going to go up to the top? And I'm never going to think about a tree the same, because now I'm going to be thinking about my plan of action, how I'm going to get around it. And then I'm going to be thinking about what the trail maintainers are going to be doing to clear it. So that just puts in a whole new perspective of, instead of, hiking along and thinking, oh, I wish somebody would just come out here, and take care of this. There's a process to maintaining the trail. There's a process to putting in new bridges and things like that. So again,
right.
Thank you for your service to us on the trail. And I've got one last question before we get into the reading. If you were to give the listeners, and I'm going to call it a call to action, so to speak, for all of us that love trails and love to hike, what would that be?
What would that be? I would say just get out there. If you're walking a local trail in your area, there's probably a group maintaining it. Get on Facebook, hit them up, let them know, like, hey, I would love to come out to one of your volunteer days, and just kind of meet the organization. Some little notes I got here: follow your local organizations. Even if you're not walking those trails, donate a little money every now and then. And then kind of just word of mouth. If I always like to throw out there, like, hey, you ever know what Leave No Trace is? I throw that into random conversations all the time. Like, hey, do you know what Leave No Trace is? And then you've got an hour-long conversation with a friend, and then that word of mouth just told them someone else. Let them tell someone else what Leave No Trace is. So word of mouth is a big one. If you see someone littering out on the trail, don't feel like you have to say something, but it's worth saying, hey, I saw you drop that candy bar wrapper up ahead the trail. I'm going to grab it, but maybe next time just watch where you're dropping your trash. Plenty of times I'm eating a candy bar and I just shove that little wrapper down in my pocket and forget and pull it out, and it falls on the trail. But yeah, just be observant, be aware, and keep my trail there. Keep our trail alive.
I can think of no better way to end it than that. Taran, thank you again. Now we've come to the point in the podcast where the guest is going to sign off for us by reading their own journal entry, statement, or quote that will inspire us to keep hiking section by section.
Yeah, so this is a little quote from one of my journals. This was the year of the Florida Trail and Appalachian Trail, and this was about I think it was after a pretty rough day from my previous little notes here on my notepad. As I hike more and see all that I do, being in the woods shows why walking is so addictive to most hikers. The things we see via the trail, the people, the wildlife, scenery, it all changes us. One struggle on trail can create a whole new outlook on life and why walking is so important to me and to all of us, the hikers.
Taran, thank you so much, not only for being that career section hiker, but for being that trail maintainer and putting the call to action out to all of us to, no matter where we are out on the trail, pick up garbage, give locally, give money if you can. Really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. It's been great. It's been a long time since I've talked trail, really nitty gritty about section hiking, and it's a dream, and it's a dream come true. It still always is every trip.
Thanks again, Taran. Appreciate it. I I cannot thank you enough, Taran, for coming on the podcast and sharing not only your love and passion for your section hiking, but also your love and passion for maintaining the trails. I don't think any of us will ever walk across a bridge or look at a downed tree on the trail the same again. Thanks for encouraging all of us to practice Leave No Trace, get involved with our local trail community, and pick up garbage wherever we see it. On next week's episode, you're going to be introduced to a multi-tour combat veteran who has a deep passion for the White Mountains of New Hampshire, is section hiking the Appalachian Trail, and loves his dog Bella. Thanks for listening, everybody, and happy section hiking.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me, and I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods. You're wondering if I go wandering with you, what kind of trouble we'll get ourselves into. Would it be wrong to tag along with a band of vagabonds? You wonder if I'd wander with you. So I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river. I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way, if you ever get lost or if the trail leads you astray. The music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. We'll round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets and these neighborhoods, head over the river and through the woods.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.